ghost before the title. Please come, Holy Spirit. Ever wonder why? Chapter 19. Time to choose. Love or hate, life or death, God or the devil. At the end of chapter 18 I said, love comes from and is God. Hate comes from and is the devil. I believe just as love transcends time, space, death, and mortality, so does hate. There is a very fine line and a very big difference between love and hate. So the question is, how could a God who is supposed to love us create such an evil entity such as the devil, who hates God and us so much that he wants to see our immortal souls suffer and burn in hell with him forever? The whole purpose of this V-book is, why did God create the devil? Don't worry, I'm going to answer that question very soon, but in the meanwhile, I'll give you a clue. It has to do with our immortal souls. Our mortal lives are nothing but a fart in a hurricane compared to our eternal souls. Our flesh is mortal. Our consciousness, our spirit, and our soul is not. Therefore our soul is all that really counts in our mortal lives. In chapter 4, part 2, I asked, so what is our soul? And I answered, as far as I can tell, our souls are a 3-in-1 trinity like God. Our souls come with 3 elements in one. What are those 3 elements in one, you ask? To me, those 3 elements in one are, number 1, our essence, number 2, our spirit, and number 3, our consciousness. So what exactly does that mean? To me it means our soul is the essence of our being, and our spirit is the being of our essence, and our consciousness is the awareness of our being alive. And the essence of our being alive is our soul, our gift of life from God. It's just like our present. Our gift of today is also all that really counts in our mortal lives. Our past does not equal our future, but our present, our gift of today, our gift from God, defines our past and determines our future. If we don't take advantage of our present, our gift of today from God, to safeguard our immortal souls from the hatred of the devil and the fires of hell, then we will be hating every everlasting second of our future eternal present, living in hell, with us hating the devil and the devil hating us. Too many living souls will be burning in hell with the devil, laughing and tormenting them forever. Whereas if we take care of our present, our gift of today from God, to safeguard our immortal souls from the hatred of the devil and the fires of hell, then we will be loving every everlasting second of our future eternal present, living in paradise with us loving God and God loving us forever. Like I said, there is a very fine line and a very big difference between love and hate. It's time to choose, love or hate, life or death, God or the devil. The funny thing about choosing between love and hate here on earth is that it can be very confusing. Sometimes the difference can be very hard to discern. Oftentimes love looks like hate and hate looks like love. For example, how many people have been murdered by their spouse, by their family members, or by their friends that are supposed to love them? Murdered in the name of, or for the sake of, love. Is that love, or is that hate? Another example is, I love you so much I'm going to kill you, or someone else because of you, so that only I can have you. Again, is that love, or is that hate? The devil is so good at deceiving us, and we are so good at deceiving ourselves. He and we make choosing hate look like love, while he and we make choosing love look like hate. We can justify just about any kind of sin there is in the name of love, including murder. It's a lot easier to be evil than it is to be good. It's a lot easier to sin than it is to be saintly. And it's a lot easier to hate than it is to love. Like I said before, some people hate to love, and others love to hate. Either way, they both involve love and hate. A choice has to be made. Telling God to get out of my life was the worst mistake I've ever made in my life. Although I hated having a heart of stone after I told God to get out of my life, I still had a choice to make. I could have gone on hating it. I could have gone on hating myself. And yes, I could have even gone on hating God. So I had to ask myself, do I hate myself? Do I hate God for what happened to me? Or do I look for the good in it and learn from the lessons in it? Like I said, there is good to be found in every evil, or what we might perceive to be evil. I, like everybody else, have choices to make. I could have easily hated God or worse. I could have allowed the devil to deceive me. And worse, I could have deceived myself. I could have denied there was a God. I could have said and convinced myself to believe there was no God. For what good, loving, and kind God would do such a horrible thing to me? Although it seemed like a horrible thing, and indeed it felt like it was horrible, losing this beautiful woman after introducing me to her, and after allowing me to fall in love with her, it certainly did feel horrible. I felt like I was 14 all over again. I felt like I was having my heart broken all over again for the very first time, and it hurt me enormously. The pain of the loss was dreadful. Almost everything about losing this wonderful girl was a terrible experience. Many people have cursed, hated, and denied God for much less. I could have lied to myself and falsely justified the hatred by blaming God for suddenly bringing this beautiful woman into my life, and then just as suddenly taking her away from me. I chose to thank God instead of cursing him for what he allowed to happen to me. I was ready to give love another chance. I didn't only believe in love again, but I was also visualizing the wonderful life we would have together. I was so ready and enthusiastic about our future together. I was craving, desiring, and yearning for love again. I was willing to surrender my heart and give love my all, something I had intentionally avoided since feeling the pain and the sorrow of a broken heart from my first experience with love. I learned my first lesson about having a broken heart when I was 14. I learned it hurt like hell. I learned my first lesson about love a few years later. It was something I kind of already knew, but hadn't quite put into words the same way Thomas à Kempis did in his book, My Imitation of Christ. I read that Thomas à Kempis said, "There is no living in love without some pain or sorrow." That quote came from the chapter, The Wonderful Effects of Divine Love. It doesn't matter if it is a physical, metaphysical, or material thing that you love. One day you will lose it. It will be taken away from you. Lots of people call my first love a puppy love. I didn't see or feel about it that way. If I had, it wouldn't have taken me 2 years plus to get over it. I could have cursed, hated, and denied God way back when I first experienced the stinging pain of love and a broken heart at the age of 14. But I didn't. I just suffered in silence and blamed myself for the betrayal. Many people I've met over my lifetime curse, hate, and even deny there is a God for taking away someone or something special that they loved. It's really very easy to blame God for just about anything bad, sad, painful, hurtful, or detrimental to our feeling well and our well-being. Just blame God for everything bad that has ever happened to us in our lifetimes. Never mind thanking him for all the great and good things that have happened to us. Just blame him for all the bad things. We would be wise to thank him for both, the great and the terrible. Good can be found in both. Because the Lord your God, he is the God of gods, and the Lord of lords, a great God, and mighty, and terrible. Deuteronomy 10:17. He is your praise and your God. It is he who has done these great and terrible things for you, which your eyes have seen. Deuteronomy 10:21. It is also easy to blame other people for our misgivings. If we look at our own decisions, participation, and the actions we contributed to the matter, then we have to accept responsibility for a lot of the blame ourselves. We also have to accept our blame for the results. Then we wouldn't be so quick to blame God or other people, situations, circumstances, and a whole host of other excuses for what is basically our own fault for the most part. We have no right to attempt any sort of justification to put the blame on anyone or anything else for the predicaments we find ourselves in. Like I said earlier, I hate to give you the good news, people, but what we do to ourselves. We are our own worst enemies. This in itself is a great evil. The bright side in this, of course, is that even in this great evil, there is some good to be found. The good to be found in this great evil is our greatest strengths are found in our greatest weaknesses. Our body is a temple, a temporary vessel to house and transport our spirit, our consciousness, and our soul around. It should be treated with respect, regarded and revered as holy. We are supposed to keep it as clean and as pure as possible. Some of the things we subject ourselves to, and some of the things we put our bodies through, are truly reprehensible. If, however, we overcome the temptations and root out those things that are the causes of our greatest weaknesses, then we have truly found the core of our greatest strengths. This is the good that can be found in the evil things we do to ourselves. The good I found in the pain of my first experience with love was twofold. These two things I also learned from Thomas à Kempis. Number 1, never put all your trust and hopes in mankind, for how often has mankind failed or let you down? Number 2, never love anyone or anything too inordinately, but God. All other things will pass away. The more you love someone or something, the more it hurts when you lose them or it is taken away from you. I have to tell you, it really hurt the first time I felt the pain of love. I was betrayed. It hurt just as much the second time, when I lost the girl I was willing to give love another chance with. The only difference in the two experiences is I got over the second time a lot quicker than the first. It took about 2 years plus to get past the pain of the first time, and only 6 to 8 months for the second. I still think of both of them to this day. I thank God for both experiences and the lessons I learned. You might be wondering what I found good about the terrible loss of my second love. You might also be wondering why I chose to thank God rather than curse him. Well, I'll tell you why. Remember when I said my girlfriend's family listened to the doctors and decided to pull the plug on her? After I had begged God they wouldn't do that? Well, they pulled the plug on her all right. I thought I didn't get what I asked for, but when I thought about it, I did. God had only done what I asked him to do. I asked God to break my heart of stone and to give me back my heart of flesh. I asked God to give me back my feelings. I asked God to let me love and care again. Well, you know what? He did exactly what I asked for. Boy, did he ever. I cried like a baby. I hadn't cried like that for ages. Altogether, it took about 5 to 6 years for God to give me what I asked for. 2 to 3 years of nothing, and 3 years of a wonderful relationship with a beautiful woman. I am very grateful to God for the 3 short years we had together. I now know that God would not have been able to break my heart of stone without first giving my heart feelings of love again. I had to have love to start feeling again. I had to start caring about people. I had to start caring about things. Good old great, wonderful and wise God knew I had to fall in love again in order for him to really break my heart of stone. I just never thought or even imagined that God would use such drastic measures to grant me my request. Again, be very careful what you ask for. You just might get it. I got it, and it was a very traumatic and terrible experience at the time. In the long run, though, it was also a very great thing that God did for me. God came back into my life and gave me back my heart. Thanks to God, I'm back to feeling normal again. I no longer have a heart of stone. I have feelings and emotions. I cry at the drop of a hat. I have sympathy and empathy for others, and I feel love for everything again. I realized I got what I asked God for. Boy, did it ever hurt having a broken heart again. But boy, was I ever grateful for it. The bright side of my second broken heart was that I had God back in my life again, and I realized I could love again. So what is love? God is love. And now I have another question for you. Question number 11. If you had to define love using only one word other than God, what would that one word be? I've asked this question to countless people. I have never got a satisfactory answer from anybody yet. Whenever I say things like, no satisfactory answers from countless other people, I do not mean to imply that no one else out there has not been given the same answers that I have. I only mean to say I haven't met them yet. I'm sure I'm not the only person in the world who has ever been given answers which I believe to be from God. So let me ask you again, if you had to describe love using only one word other than God, what would that one word be? Stop and think about that for a while. Write down a couple of one-word answers if you like. Answers what you think that one word might be. Then later we will compare our answers and see if the answer you came up with is the same as the answer I was given. But before we compare answers, I will share with you some of the things that love is with more than one word. The following is an excerpt taken from the book My Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. Love is an excellent thing, a very great good indeed, which alone makes light all that is burdensome, and equally bears all that is unequal. For it carries a burden without being burdened, and makes all which is bitter, sweet, and savory. The love of Jesus is noble and generous. It spurs us on to do great things, and excites us to desire always that which is most perfect. Love will tend upward, and is not to be detained by things beneath. Love will be at liberty, and free from all worldly affections, lest its interior sight be hindered, lest it suffer itself to be entangled with any temporal interest, or cast down by losses. Nothing is sweeter than love, nothing stronger, nothing higher, nothing more generous, nothing more pleasant, nothing fuller or better in heaven or on earth. For love proceeds from God, and cannot rest, but in God above all things created. The lover flies, runs, and rejoices. He is free, and not held. He gives all for all, and has all in all, because he rests in one sovereign good above all, from whom all good flows and proceeds. He looks not at the gifts, but turns himself to the giver above all goods. Love often knows no measure, but is inflamed above all measure. Love feels no burden, values no labors, would willingly do more than it can, complains not of impossibility, because it conceives that it may and can do all things. It is able, therefore, to do anything, and it performs and effects many things, that where he who loves not faints and lies down. Love watches, and sleeping slumbers not. When weary, is not tired. When straitened, is not constrained. When frightened, is not disturbed. But like a living flame and a torch all on fire, it mounts upward and securely passes through all opposition. Love is swift, sincere, pious, pleasant, and delightful, strong, patient, faithful, prudent, long-suffering, courageous, and never seeking itself. Love is circumspect, humble, and upright, not soft, not light, not intent on vain things, is sober, chaste, stable, quiet, and keeps guard over all the senses. Love is submissive and obedient to superiors, in its own eyes, mean and contemptible, devout and thankful to God, always trusting and hoping in him, even when it tastes not the relish of God's sweetness. For there is no living in love without some pain or sorrow. That excerpt was taken from the chapter called The Wonderful Effects of Divine Love. If you like that description of love, you can buy the actual book with its amazing artwork at http://confraternitypb.org/contact.html. In the same book, Thomas à Kempis also said, "A valiant lover looks not at the gift of the lover, but rather the love of the giver." From the chapter, The Proving of a True Lover. God, bringing that beautiful woman into my life, was a gift. God, taking away that beautiful woman out of my life, was also a gift. The gift, me loving that girl, of the lover, God, was great. The love of the giver, God, me losing that girl, was greater. God's love in giving me the gift of loving that girl was great. God's love in taking her, the gift, away was even greater. God knew I had to fall in love in order to break my heart of stone. There was no other way to do it. So he gave me the gift of loving that girl, and he took her away to give me the greater gift, which I had been asking him for years. I just didn't expect him to break my heart of stone in that way. When I realized what God had done after he did it, I thanked him. God gave me what I asked for. That's why I thank God, rather than curse him, for his wonderful gifts of both the great and the terrible. It was great loving that girl, and it was terrible losing her. Indeed, love is many things. But apart from the word God, what one word did you come up with to define love? All right then, let us now compare our answers. The question was, question number 11. If you had to define love using only one word other than God, what would that one word be? The answer? Sacrifice. Let's face it, to love is to sacrifice. If you love, you sacrifice. For example, let's say you're a parent who loves your children. Which one of you would not willingly sacrifice your life to save the life of your child? Which one of you would not unconditionally take the place of your child in a life or death situation if you had the chance to? Which one of you would rather watch your child die rather than yourself, knowing you have the power to save them? Which one of you who truly loves your child would stand idly by and do nothing to spare your child's life? Not a single one of you out there who truly loves their child would stand idly by and do nothing to spare their child's life. Every single one of you out there who truly loves your children would willingly take your children's place and sacrifice your own life to spare theirs. This is what love is. This is what love does. To love is to sacrifice. If you love, you sacrifice. God proved this to us when He made the greatest sacrifice of all. First, God sacrificed a piece of Himself from Himself in order to create others like Himself, meaning us, which will be explained in the next chapter. Second, God sacrificed His only begotten Son for the love of us. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son. He sacrificed His only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in Him shall not perish, but have life everlasting. John 3:16. Love is so great and so grand, so inflamed beyond all measure, so giving of itself. It is not only your children that you love that you would sacrifice for. These same scenarios would apply to anyone who is not a parent, but is truly in love with another. Which one of you who is truly in love with your partner would not willingly sacrifice your life to save the life of your partner? Love is indeed all of the things and more described by Thomas à Kempis in The Wonderful Effects of Divine Love. But to define love with only one word other than God, sacrifice, is the one indisputable word that accurately and ultimately defines what love really is. How many of us haven't already sacrificed lots of things so our children or our loved ones may have more opportunities for a better life? How many of us want our children to have more than we did? How many of us would rather go hungry than see our children or our loved ones starve? How many of us would rather go without than see our children or loved ones go without? How many of us have already denied ourselves expensive and inexpensive material goods, new items, new clothes, cars, vacations, etc.? How many of us forsake spending money on ourselves so we can save it for our children or our loved ones? How many of us would willingly sacrifice all those things and more for the sake of our children and for the sake of our loved ones? Every one of us who love our children, or every one of us who love our loved ones, would give up, sacrifice, anything and everything we had to offer for the sake of our children and for the sake of our loved ones. Who hasn't already denied themselves many things for the sake of their loved ones? How many of you guys out there haven't given up, sacrificed lots of things for the girl you love? How many of you girls out there haven't given up, sacrificed lots of things for the guy you love? Love willingly gives its all for all. Love, for the greater good of all, is willing to sacrifice its all, including itself. Love unquestionably sacrifices and gives all that it can, merely for the sake of love. Therefore, the incontrovertible one-word definition for love, in my opinion, is sacrifice. This one-word definition for love was another answer given to me by God, through that little voice in my head. Believe it or not, I learned this lesson at a very young age. I didn't know it at the time. However, when I did get the answer, and proved it to be true to myself, I could trace back the plenty of sacrifices I had made throughout my lifetime for the sake of love. At the same time, though, I have to admit, whatever sacrifices I made throughout my lifetime for the sake of love pale in comparison compared to the sacrifices my mother and siblings made for the sake of their love for me. If you look back throughout your lifetime, I'm positive you will also realize how many sacrifices you have made for the sake of love. I can go back all the way to my early childhood when I would give up a candy bar, a pop, a part of my allowance for one of my siblings, or a neighbor, or a stranger. I can even trace back one of my sacrifices of love to when I was a little child. Of course, I didn't realize it was a sacrifice back then, because I was only a little child. I remember sacrificing my whole allowance, which was only 10 cents, to buy an ashtray for my grandmother's birthday present, because my grandmother loved her cigarettes, and I loved her. I willingly gave up my whole 10 cents to buy her that ashtray. She cherished and used it every day of her life thereafter. I remember it didn't feel anything at all like a sacrifice giving her that ashtray. It felt good, real good. It felt even better when I saw she was still using that little red 10-cent ashtray 20 and 30 years later. I have to admit, it was the best 10-cent sacrifice I ever made for love. I willingly gave up my time, efforts, plans, and sweat to either look after or help one of my siblings, when I could have been doing something else that would have been more fun for me. All these things, although they may not be much, are nonetheless still sacrifices. These things I gave up simply for family and brotherly love, not even set your heart on fire, chemically charged physical attraction, and mutually reciprocated love, are nothing compared to the things my family gave up for me. When I look back to when I was 12, and what I thought was my first real, heart-pounding, hormone-raging physical love, I realize all the things I willingly sacrificed for love. I sacrificed my physical urges and my feelings. I sacrificed my time and my money. I sacrificed everything I could, including myself. I willingly sacrificed all for the sake of love. In the end, I even sacrificed my love. I gave up my love for my first real girlfriend to someone else without hatred, without jealousy, without anger or revenge. I sacrificed my love for her because I felt that was what she wanted. I still loved her and had tremendous feelings for her. I couldn't give her my love anymore because she wouldn't accept it. After my first love was over at the age of 14, my heart really ached and hurt like nothing I had ever experienced before. I sacrificed plenty of other relationships because I was still in love with her. I could easily go on and revisit all my heterosexual relationships, but it would take forever. Besides, I think you get the picture. All you have to do is look at your own life. I'm sure there is a wealth of sacrifices that you too have made over the years for the sake of love. I'm convinced by now you would agree with me. If you love, you sacrifice. You can't have one without the other. In this life, there is no living in love without some pain or sorrow. That's just the way it is. If you still don't get it, I'll give you a couple of more quick examples. If someone you love, a parent, a child, a brother, a sister, a spouse, or a friend, died today, how would that make you feel? If the pet you loved died tomorrow, how would that make you feel? Whether we know it or not, and whether we want to admit it or not, we all agree to accept the pain that is guaranteed to come with love, for love's sake. We are all willing to make that painful sacrifice for the sake of love. I have sacrificed and done many things I wouldn't necessarily do if I wasn't inspired to do them by love. So have you. Every one of us could choose to curse, hate, and even deny there is a God, for all the hurtful and painful things we suffer in this lifetime for the sake of love. Some of us even choose to become hateful. I could have chosen to be hateful when I felt the pain of love at 14. I could have chosen to be hateful when I lost my second love. I didn't. I chose love, and I hope you do too. No matter what hurt or pain we might experience in this lifetime for the sake of love, it is nothing compared to the hurt and pain we will feel in our next lifetime, in our life after life, in the hereafter. If we choose hate over love, evil over good, or the devil over God in this lifetime, then we have chosen hell over heaven, death over life, and the devil over God in our next lifetime. Love is life, and hate is death. We all have to make that choice sooner or later, one way or the other. What will be your choice? Love or hate? Life or death? God or the devil? Again, choose wisely, my friends. A crown awaits in heaven, or fires await in hell. The choice is ours, and there's no time like the present to make that choice. Choose love over hate, choose life over death, and choose God over the devil. End of chapter 19. All honor and glory to God. Coming next, chapter 20. why God created the devil. Until then, remember, the devil is stalking you, and God is calling you.